Hey guys, it's Ollie from UtdXclusive. We're back again for another podcast with Zach Lowy, who's co-owner of Breaking the Lines, and we're going to be answering some questions from him, getting some, thoughts on Manchester United's transfer window and the next few months, because obviously the season's starting again, and there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and this guy knows a lot about it, so it's a perfect person to get on. It's a pleasure joining. It's a pleasure for you to join us here.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to come on, and I'm super excited to be discussing Manchester United's transfers with you today.
Awesome, great stuff. Well, the big question at the moment is Raphael Varane. There's so much links from him. French defender exited the Euros early, so he doesn't really have much on his plans now other than starting a new season. Real Madrid apparently, they don't want to sign him a new contract, and United look for a defender to partner Maguire, and Varane is the perfect fit. There's been a lot of news going around. Do you know anything about that? Anything exclusive you can tell us, or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm not Fabrizio Romano or David Ornstein, so I don't have any exclusive links, but I do believe that it is incredibly advanced. I mean, looking at all of the links and the articles that we've seen, as far as deals that have not yet been completed yet, it seems like a done deal, shall we say. Obviously, it's not a done deal, but
Yeah.
I would say it's probably like 90-95% the way done. I think that Manchester United will formulate a formal offer in the coming days. And from what I've read, Real Madrid are going to be demanding 60 million euros. United, I think that they will end up meeting in the middle for around 55 million,
Yeah.
shall we say. I think that getting above 50 million is decent value for both parties, considering the fact that Varane is, a French international, World
Yeah.
Cup champion, has won pretty much everything there is to win, but who also only has 1 year left on his contract.
Yeah.
Okay, so overall, I would expect it. I would expect it to be closed within the next week or so. Obviously, with United, it's never easy. Like I remember seeing like for months on end. Oh, Jadon Sancho is
Yeah.
he's about to be announced, and like it just kept on
It went on for
going
so
on.
long.
It's never easy with United, but I do think that we won't get a Sancho saga that we saw last summer. I think that it will be completed soon, and which should be good for Varane to have a full preseason with the club and
Yeah,
get up to speed prior to the Premier League campaign.
definitely. And it's one of those signings that United have always been linked with. It's similar to Sergio Ramos. Like they've always had him on their radar. He's always been like a top target. So I feel confident, Percy, and hearing what you had to say on that matter is even more confidence for me. So I love to see that. Now, going on from one Frenchman to another Frenchman, Paul Pogba, he's only got 1 year on his contract as well, similar to Varane. There's been some links I've heard from PSG. I know negotiating with him. PSG looked like the most likely team that he would go to if he was going to leave, from what I've seen. Do you know anything about that? Do you think Paul Pogba will stay at Manchester United, or do you think it's a case of let's get him out before his contract ends and he goes on free?
It's a tricky one. I mean, I did recently see an article today from a Parisian website um, that he had agreed a contract with Paris Saint-Germain. Hard to tell, whether it's advanced. I would wait and see. But yeah, I do think that United won't be want they won't want to take a risk. They won't want to have him, run down his contract, and because at that point you're either going to lose him for free or you're going to be held at ransom and have to pay a massive contract for a player who is still in his prime, but
Yeah,
given what we've seen from like David De Gea and Alexis Sanchez, I don't know. I think that United definitely don't want to avoid a similar scenario.
yeah,
I believe De Gea was already in the final 12 months of his contract when he signed that deal
yeah,
of 375,000 a week.
yeah,
So clearly they won't want to repeat a similar deal. But if Pogba does leave, I think it will be for Paris Saint-Germain. I had always speculated that Juventus would try to make a move, but given their financial difficulties, I would probably suggest that's out of the running. You never know because they do love a free transfer here and there.
Yeah.
But I just think that Paris Saint-Germain would probably be able to offer him a better wage. And so yeah, I think that if any team is going to get him, it'll be Paris Saint-Germain. They just seem like every other team is tightening their belts, and yet PSG is just spending a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah.
They've obviously most of their signings have been free transfers with Donnarumma, Wijnaldum, and Ramos, but they've spent a ton of money in wages as well as wages and transfer fee for Achraf Hakimi, and they definitely don't look like they're showing any signs of stopping because they want to. You have to remember that not only do they want to win the Champions League, they also want to show Kylian Mbappe that look, we're serious about building a super team. We're ambitious. We can compete with any other team in Europe as
Yeah.
far as ambitions go. So there are multiple levels to this. I think that Pogba, it's far too early to tell. I don't think that Pogba. I think it's probably 50-50. I could easily see him leaving, and I could easily see him renewing his contract.
Yeah.
I don't think that I don't think that there's a new challenge for him, shall we say. I think that, a lot of players, okay, you get to an English club and you may want to go to Real Madrid or Barcelona or whatever. I think that Pogba has always thought that he wanted to triumph at Manchester United since leaving as a teenager.
Yeah.
And so if the financial offer is good enough, I could easily see him staying with United.
Yeah, because with Paul Pogba as well, I feel like if he really does want to achieve something with United and, have a challenge, I think the perfect challenge, really, there isn't many places other than Man United at the moment. You see Varane, you see Sancho, you see a young squad with a lot of potential, and it starts to build this whole, atmosphere that United could be serious soon. They could be up there, back again at the top. So it's looking very promising. But, if Paul Pogba does leave, do you reckon Manchester United will go in for a different midfielder? There's been some links with Camavinga, but I'm not too sure how strong they are. But there's also, we've got Van den Beek, who's a young player still, and he came in last season, kind of speculated as the Pogba replacement, but never really, stood up to standards. He hasn't really played much. Do you reckon they would try and replace him with Van den Beek, or would it be a new signing? Like, do you know anything about that? Do you have any opinion on that?
I think that United should be going for a new midfielder, whether or not Pogba stays.
Yeah.
So, to lose somebody as good as Pogba and then not sign a replacement would be pretty ridiculous for United standpoint, especially given the fact that, they are one of the richest clubs in football. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I would absolutely expect them to sign another midfielder. I think that Eduardo Camavinga would make a lot of sense. As far as a Pogba replacement, I do feel like they need a somewhat of a defensive midfielder.
Yeah. I completely agree there.
And Camavinga, I don't think he's a pure defensive midfielder. I think putting him in a defensive midfield role, we've seen at Rennes just how much that kind of limits him as a player. He's far more dynamic, and that's not to say that he isn't a great ball winner. He is. He's very good at getting those tackles in midfield and starting a counterattack and doing the dirty work in midfield. I just think that putting him in like a Nemanja Matic role would be limiting his capacities somewhat.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I mean, I don't know. I think that I do think that Van de Beek has more to show than what we've seen from him last season. Because Solskjaer, I think that if there's any player that Solskjaer doesn't want to take off, it's Bruno Fernandes. He loves him, and fair play because we've seen how important he has been over the past 18 months. But that in itself is kind of a bit damaging because you have this affinity of this infatuation for a player, and that limits another player's ability because you don't want to rotate, you don't want to take him off. I think that Bruno Fernandes, if I'm not mistaken, he played the most minutes in Europe's in Europe's top 5 leagues out of all outfield players.
Yeah.
So I do think that Van de Beek Solskjaer needs to be at least open to the possibility of experimenting with him in a deeper role. I've spoke about this on previous United podcasts, but Van de Beek has shown that he can thrive in a deeper role. He was almost used as a Frankie de Jong replacement at Ajax, playing in more of a box-to-box role. He's a very good player, and I think that I think that in many ways he could be like a new signing for United.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think Van den Beek, he's proven himself already at Ajax. And, I mean, the Holland League isn't like the biggest league in the world, but even in the Champions League, he had some stellar performances. And he's just one of those players that is still quite young. He's still got a lot to give. I think one thing he might have struggled with is settling into the Premier League. I feel like he's sometimes, from personal experience, just watching him play for United, he sometimes takes a bit too long on the ball. He's still not adapted to the quickness of the Premier League. And you see a lot of footballers like that, but I think it will come. He's young, he's hungry to go. And, there's been a lot of links saying that he's not wanting to leave, he's wanting to stay, fight for his place. And it's a good attitude to have. And it's definitely a good player to keep around. Now, there's also been links with that with Saul from Atletico Madrid. And he's been linked with pretty much every team around Europe, to be honest. But is there anything in that, or do you think like it's just another way of getting a new contract? Like, what's the catch around this?
So yeah, I tweeted out the rumor from Francisco from Francisco of Mundo Deportivo, and obviously United fans went crazy as they do with any transfer rumor. I wouldn't be tweeting it out if I didn't think he was a reliable source, but I just think we need to have. I need to see more legs. I need to see more people confirming that rumor in order to give more credence to it. Personally, I think that he is somebody that United have looked at, but if I had to pick a Premier League team that Salah would be going for, it would probably be Liverpool. I just think he makes a lot more sense given the fact that, Jorginho Wijnaldum is leaving, given the fact that there is some controversy. It remains to be seen what happens with Jordan Henderson's contract, who's entering the final 2 years. Obviously, injury issues to Naby Keita and Thiago and so on. I think he would make a lot more sense at Liverpool, but I don't doubt that Jonathan Barnett, who is the agent of Gareth Bale and I believe Camavinga as well, of quite a few big name stars. I don't doubt that he's mentioned his name in potential discussions with people who have importance at Manchester United. I just think that Liverpool, if I had to pick a team that Saul would be going for, it would be Liverpool. So I'm not going to say that Saul won't join Manchester United, because I think that he might very well be, especially if Pogba leaves. I think he would be somebody that they would be looking at. But I think that Liverpool would be the more likely option. I do expect Saul to leave this summer, though, because he is a player who's on a high wage, who still has a very high profile, despite somewhat declining in value over the past year. And he's a player who, has lost his starting spot at Atletico Madrid, and who is going to have an even tougher time getting into the lineup with Rodrigo de Paul joining from Udinese. So I would expect Atletico to, try to balance the cost of losing, of signing de Paul as well as some other players this summer with a sale of a big name player. And I would definitely expect that player to be Saul. It just makes sense from all parties' perspective. He does have, obviously, he has quite a few suitors across Europe. And the latest from Spain is that the proposed transfer swap between Saul Niguez and Antoine Griezmann is pretty much dead in the water. It was always going to be a long shot, because transfer swaps are never easy in football, as opposed to other sports, because you just have so many factors. So, with the Saul and Griezmann swap dead, I think that it's far more likely that Saul ends up in the Premier League. We're seeing a lot of talented La Liga players heading for England this summer. Varane will probably be the next one. Brian Gill, it looks like will join Tottenham in
Yeah.
a swap deal for Eric Lamela. And I would definitely expect Saul to be headed to England this summer.
Yeah. Okay. So there's also, a lot of news about transfers out of Manchester United. One is Alex Telles, but then I've got another one that there's not really been too much news about, but surely something's going to happen eventually. David De Gea, Dean Henderson, two talented goalkeepers who really should be starting for their team. And they're giving Ollie a massive headache all last season. And there's just all these questions. I feel like it's gone under the radar a bit the last few months, but surely something's going to happen, right? Surely there's going to be a transfer. Do you reckon it will be De Gea or will it be Henderson? Like, do you know anything? Do you have any opinions on it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any insider knowledge on either, but yeah, it does seem like something's got to give. It's just what happens. If I were to make a guess between the two, I think that United would rather sell De Gea, given the fact that he's a lot older. He's on a ridiculous amount of money, I believe 375,000 a week. And I do know that obviously Dean Henderson has signed a contract recently. But I think that Henderson's wage is a lot lower than De Gea's, obviously. And when you just compare the two, like, I don't think that any United fan can go out and say, "Oh, De Gea is way better than Henderson," or "Henderson is way better than De Gea."
Yeah.
I would say it's about 50-50 myself.
Yeah.
We've seen just, I think this De Gea started, I believe, 10 more games more than Henderson did, but
It was very in and out, especially near the end of the
it was
season.
varied in and out.
Yeah.
And I just don't think it makes sense to have two talented goalkeepers who are on very high wages at the same time. I think that it is very hard to maintain a war a goalkeeper debate, shall we say. It almost never works out in the long term.
Yeah.
We saw that with Barcelona a few years ago when they had Claudio Bravo and Marc-Andre Ter Stegen. Ter Stegen said, I'm not comfortable with only playing cup matches. I want to leave if you're not going to make me first choice. So Barcelona ended up selling Claudio Bravo to Manchester City,
Yeah.
the older option, obviously. And I think that was the right decision at the end. Same thing happened with Real Madrid, with Thibaut Courtois and Keylor Navas. Once again, Real Madrid ended up selling the older option with Keylor. So I would expect United to have to do that, to end up selling the older options as the two Spanish clubs have. It's just, I mean, you have an extremely small pool of clubs that can afford to pay David De Gea what Manchester United are currently paying him. So I think that, I think that United would probably have to do what's called like a golden handshake, or in Italian it would be called una buona uscita, which is essentially just like paying De Gea a little bit of compensation wage elsewhere and leave.
Yeah.
I would expect them to have to do that. But even so, so De Gea is currently on £375,000 a week, I believe.
Yeah.
If you're taking like a pretty big chunk, pretty big pay cut, there really are not many clubs that can afford to pay that, right? I think
Yeah.
Paris Saint-Germain would have made a lot of sense if they had not just signed Gianluigi Donnarumma, and now they have Donnarumma and Keylor Navas at the same club. So they're completely out of the running. Juventus, it looks like Massimiliano Allegri wants Szczesny to stay as the number one. So I don't know about them. With the COVID-19 pandemic, like I could have potentially seen an Inter making a move for De Gea. But with the pandemic, it doesn't make any sense when you already have to tighten the belt so much and sell, Achraf Hakimi from Inter's point of view. So it's really hard to see. But if I were to guess, I would guess it would be De Gea somehow, some way, I think they would manage to do it, but it's just really hard. But as you say, like it's just pretty unfeasible, especially after bringing in Tom Heaton. Like
Yeah.
he's a decent goalkeeper. I
Yeah,
mean,
he's definitely a good backup.
he's an England international. He's started for several Premier League clubs. I don't think that he's come just to do the Scott Carson role or whatever. I think
Yeah.
he knows it's going to be tough, but he wants to at least make a push for a starting spot.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to think that something's got to give, and either Henderson or De Gea leaves. And I mean, if I were to guess, it would be De Gea.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Dean Henderson, he's the much younger prospect. He's shown it in his performances as well. And I feel like with De Gea, it was the same story. We gave him a chance, and there was questions and doubts at first, but he turned into one of the best goalkeepers and probably the best goalkeeper in the world at some points in his prime. And there's nothing saying that Dean Henderson can't do the same. He's been rated by many players, by many managers, and he really looks like a potential, future star. And I feel like that's probably the best way to go about it. But speaking from another Englishman, Jadon Sancho, obviously that signing is now complete. It's still pending the official announcement. Edison Cavani came in last season as the number 7. However, Jadon Sancho was, everyone expected it to be Sancho, the number 7. But now Cavani's got number 7. There's been shirts outside Old Trafford, I'm pretty sure, selling the number 7 on Cavani's shirt. But do you think Jadon Sancho will be Manchester United's new number 7 this season? Or do you think it's going to have to wait another year until Cavani goes?
I mean, it's hard to say with numbers. I always wonder like how much of a difference does it really make for players? I don't have footage of like Sancho's time at Watford's academy or something. Like I don't know if
Yeah,
he's been playing with the number 7 for like his entire life. So I'm not sure, but I think he would probably have to wait for it. I mean, with all due respect to Sancho, like he's a fantastic player, and I think that he's. I think I'm really excited about this transfer from United's point of view,
yeah,
but like you're dealing with Edinson Cavani. Like this is no regular player. Like this is one of the best
100%.
strikers of his generation.
Yeah,
Okay. And he's a character, and I don't think he's going to just push over and accept it. So yeah, I would probably expect him to have to accept a new number. I don't have like I don't have a list in my head of the available numbers. I think that Daniel James is what 19 or
21. I think 22
21.
is available. And that
20.
from all
Okay.
22 and from all the numbers that like open up, I feel like 22 is a nice little fit for Sancho. But it just
Yeah.
makes more sense for I don't think Sancho himself would be bothered about having the
Yeah.
number 7. I feel like it's more of a commercial thing with United because
Yeah.
let's face it, Jadon Sancho number 7, he's kind of made it a brand now. And having that on the shirt would sell a lot more shirts, I think, personally, than Cavani.
That's
No disrespect to Cavani,
no, fair enough. I see your point, but at the same time, like I think that Sancho is going to sell shirts like no matter what.
Yeah,
And I also think it's like I don't know the 7. Like I said though, it's Edinson Cavani we're talking about. Not just some regular guy. I don't know if he accepts it, maybe.
yeah,
But like I just think like so it's kind of funny because I actually I went to a Paris Saint-Germain game in I believe it was 2020. And that was the first and only season that Kylian Mbappe was wearing the 29 shirt
yeah. I
for
remember that.
PSG. And I actually went outside the stadium and got an Mbappe shirt, the black kit with 29 on it. And
Yeah.
like I'm glad I did because honestly I like that a lot more
It's kind
than
of
this.
unique in a way.
It is unique, yeah, and
Yeah,
like came up with it with the 29 at Monaco and carried that over. I don't know. I sort of
yeah,
wish he stuck with the 29. I know that like as a player, you want to have the big numbers like 7 or 10 or whatever or 9, but like I mean, at the end of the day, the player is what makes the shirt, not the number.
100%.
So I can, yes, Jadon Sancho 7. Like, I think that he'll eventually get it, but I think he'll probably have to wait. But to be honest, I just have no idea like whether like the number is super important for Cavani. I remember
Yeah.
that like I remember that like Anthony Martial had to give up his number for
To
Zlatan,
Ibrahimovic. Yeah.
and then I think he ended up having it again.
Yeah. There was a
I
lot of
don't know.
upset about that though.
Yeah, there was.
And that could happen to Cavani, it's the same
Right.
sort of thing, right?
I don't know. I feel like it doesn't really like I think that like a number swap can have more like do more harm than good. Like
Yeah.
I just think it kind of creates unnecessary drama. Like, oh, is Sancho, because at the end of the day, I would expect both Sancho and Cavani to start together when
Yeah.
healthy. So like, yeah, I don't know. I like I said, I don't have any inside information on the numbers, like how important they are to Sancho and Cavani, but I would probably expect Cavani to keep his number, and Sancho to eventually get it if Cavani does end up leaving next summer.
Yeah, I agree with you. And also, United obviously just had their first pre-season game. It was a 2-1 against Derby. It was quite a comfortable win, but it was mainly just, the youth players getting a run out. And the main question is for United, obviously, there's a lot of young players coming in. Do you expect any of them to make a push onto the first team? Do you think Solskjaer has any of the young ones in their plans? Or is there also any players that you could see going out on loan? There's obviously Amad Diallo now, who's just come in from Atlanta, big price tag, big potential. But now there's a lot of competition and it might be a little bit too much for him at the moment. So I feel like a loan could be a good move for him. There's also a lot of young players that, need game time. There's Brandon Williams, James Garner. Do you see any of these players going out on loan? And if so, do you know where?
Yeah, I don't know where, but like you said, I would probably expect most of the players who are getting opportunities now in the first team during preseason. I would expect probably most of them to go out on loan,
Yeah.
because it is very hard to win a starting spot and nail down a starting spot, or just get regular game time at Manchester United, a club that is going to want to challenge on all fronts. So yeah, I think that I could see. I would probably say I think that. Well, I think Tathith Chong is
Yeah, he's
already
gone to
going
Birmingham City, I
Birmingham
think.
City, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I mean, I think yeah, Birmingham City. I believe Tedin Menji he just spent a short loan at Derby. And
Yeah.
I would imagine that they're going to do the same and loan him to
There's
maybe
Palestri as
Derby,
well. He
just
scored on the weekend.
who?
And Palestri,
Oh
he was
yeah,
at some Spanish team. I can't remember the name
Deportivo
now.
Alaves.
Yeah.
I would expect him. I would expect Pelistri as well to go out on loan, maybe to a La Liga club, maybe to
There's been links of him going back again for another year.
yeah.
So
I think that would make a lot of sense, just in terms of continuity.
yeah.
You don't really want to have a player if you had a good loan spell. I think it would make sense. Alaves are top flight in Spain, so I think it makes sense
Yeah.
for him to go back there. I would say probably I would probably expect the same with James Garner and Ted and Menji going back to the championship. Garner had a good loan spell at Nottingham Forest, I believe, and
Yeah.
I think yeah, we actually wrote an article. We actually had an article on that on Breaking Lines, our website, about his progress at Nottingham Forest. So yeah, I would expect both of those to be going to the championship. Potentially also Shola short tier.
Sure
Um,
to yeah.
I think that would make a lot of sense. Um, and yeah, as you mentioned, Brandon Williams, I think I don't think Alex Tellez leaves because I mean Roma looks like they've gotten their left back in Matias Vinha from Palmeiras. I expect that to be finalized within the coming days.
Yeah.
And so I obviously there are going to be other teams that want Tellez, but if I was United, I wouldn't sanction that unless it's a permanent transfer because frankly, I mean, Tellez has done a good job of being a solid rotation option and also getting Luke Shaw to probably his best levels yet, providing that competition. I think that's just what he needed to take that step up. And as such, I don't think that leaves much room for Brandon Williams. So I think that Williams going out on loan, I don't know if he'd have much value right now for a permanent transfer. So I think that would make a lot more sense, send him out on loan, see if you can, recoup a little more value, or potentially even, if you sell Tellez next summer or 2 summers from now, then you could have Williams as a backup option, So yeah, I would say I think Southampton might make sense, even though they just signed Romain Perraud from Brest.
In links of Newcastle, they make sense.
Newcastle, I could see. Well, actually, I could see that happening. I actually think that one player who would make a lot of sense for Newcastle would be Axel Tuanzebe, especially if Rafa Varane joins, which seems an almost certainty at this point. I just think look, I mean, you've got Phil Jones and Eric Bailey and Victor Lindelof all as backup options. Would probably expect Menji to leave on loan as well. It makes sense, I think, for Tuanzebe to leave either to a championship or Premier League club. And I think Newcastle honestly would make a ton of sense. He has experience working with Steve Bruce. I think especially if Bruce continues with his back 3 system, then Tuanzebe, even if he isn't a starter, he'll still get a lot more minutes there than he would at United. I think that would make a lot of sense, honestly, especially since Newcastle are pretty broke right now and are in limbo given the arbitration deal. So I think Tuanzebe going out on loan would make a lot of sense for Newcastle and for United. There's some confusion of whether Florian Lejeune will remain after returning from his loan spell or leave again. Other players could leave. So yeah, I think that United, I wouldn't wait until the end of the transfer window and see okay, is Phil Jones, are we going to get an offer for Phil Jones or for Bailey or for Lindelof? I would just loan Tuanzebe out right now to Newcastle because I think that Steve Bruce would want him. And I think he would get a lot more game time. Finally, I mean, with regards to Amad Diallo, that's probably the toughest one, I think, because Diallo, he clearly has something. He clearly has a lot of talent and a lot of use for United. But if Daniel James stays and, assuming Rashford has a quick recovery, I just don't know how many minutes he's going to get under Solskjaer. I think it would make sense as well to head out on loan. I mean, I believe he's headed to Tokyo as well for the Olympics with
that's correct.
I don't know, maybe I mean that in itself kind of states that it is a sign, I think, that that maybe Solskjaer doesn't really want him to, or doesn't really have him in his starting plans, with Rashford injured, with Sancho still on vacation. You would expect him to be in those plans, but overall, even if he does go out on loan, Ahmad, I think that he definitely has a future at United. And a loan might be the right thing for him at this point in his career.
Yeah, and also there's also Lingard, right? He's been named by Solskjaer as in his plans and whatnot. But do you think that Lingard will actually stay this season? Because personally, I rate the player and he's had a great time at West Ham, but it's one of those players that United really should just be getting rid of. I think we've got a lot of players in that can do his role a lot better, and he is worth a lot of money now. For looking back at 12 months ago, he's had a good time at West Ham and he's risen his price, and I feel like it's the perfect time to let him go. But I don't know. What do you reckon on that will happen?
I mean, I think that loaning Lingard out to West Ham was a great move. I mean, there were moments where he was probably a top 5 player in the Premier League on current form. He was playing out of his mind. And the point of that, I don't think the point of that was to end up giving him another big contract. The point of that was to get like actual good money for him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know West Ham will be interested in completing a permanent move. I've seen links about Atletico Madrid, which would be pretty crazy.
Trippier,
But
but
you know, crazier things have happened.
true.
If that's the case, then I mean, yeah, a swap deal for Kieran Trippier would make a lot of sense. I don't think I personally don't think that giving Lingard a new contract though should be that for me. I don't think that would be a good decision
No,
from United standpoint.
personally
We've
as
seen it
well.
far too many times with United just like saying, oh, let's give this guy another contract, like even though he's 28 and
Yeah.
clearly hasn't been a starter for us for like 2 years. We've seen that like Phil Jones, Chris Smalling. Like it would just make really not much sense. Now is the time to cash in. United clearly they aren't made of money, and frankly, if you can get like 15 or 20 million for a 28, 29-year-old player who's entering the final year of his contract and who's spent the past, a few months on loan and who hasn't been a starter for, I can't remember when, that would be a great deal for United.
Yeah.
Either getting cash money for him or trading him for Kieran Trippier, I think would make a lot of sense from United standpoint. So yeah, I don't think that he should remain. He clearly has he clearly has some usage and is good enough to start in the Premier League. But with Bruno Fernandes and Donny van de Beek there in the 10 role, I just don't know where he fits in.
Yeah.
He's definitely a player who thrives with space on the counter and who, if you give him that central role to shine, as kind of the team's talisman, he will thrive. But frankly, I just think it would be a terrible move from United to give him another contract.
Yeah, I don't think he's not one of those players that personally would get a lot of game time as well. Like I feel like the most you'd get is now and again on a cup game or off the bench. But you've got Bruno Fernandes, like you mentioned earlier. He's one of Ollie's favourites. Rarely gets taken off. And then now you've got Jadon Sancho, who Lingard did sometimes play on the right and whatnot. But even there, it's like all the attacking position is just really strong. Like you could even play Pogba there, and it's just like there's so many options that Lingard, I don't think he's even in the top 3 options for each position around there, and it just makes sense to move on, let him go. So we'll have to see. Obviously, at the
Doesn't
moment,
make sense for him as well to sign on, even if he's getting a
yeah.
bigger wage at United, because like Lingard. Look, I don't know if he's ever going to get back into the England team. I think there's a chance. I mean,
If
he
he keeps his
clearly,
form, I think
if
he
he
can
keeps his
definitely
form,
do
he's
it.
got a chance. I think, Southgate has shown a desire for younger players, but there's a chance of him getting in. Even if he isn't, though, I think if I'm Lingard, I'd rather have being the star playmaker of West Ham than like sitting on the bench for
I think
United.
West Ham works perfectly for him as well. Like
Exactly.
you mentioned, he has more freedom on the ball. United, they're always on the front foot with back lines just sitting in front of them, and it makes it a lot harder for players like Lingard to show their real capability. Lingard's known for running around. Like he used to be called Jesse Messi because of how he just take the ball and dribble around. And yeah, it's just I don't think it's like the perfect move in general. But
Right.
speaking more on United's build of play and whatnot, do you reckon that United will play in a 4-3-3? Because there's been some links of Solskjaer taking United into a 4-3-3, which is a bit different to what we usually see with the more 4-3-2-1 sort of 4-2-3-1 sort of formation, where you have the wide attacking midfielders and you have more of like a central depth. And do you think United is going to start playing wide and different approach to how they play? Because if you bring in Varane, you bring in Sancho, there's a lot more capability and there's a lot more strength. And, United could start moving away from that sort of counter-attacking play that they're used to, especially against the bigger teams.
I don't think that moving to a 4-3-3 makes any sense for United unless they can bring in a pure defensive midfielder.
Yeah.
And really right now the only option they have in that role is Nemanja Matic. a player whose best days are behind him,
Yeah.
and who really just doesn't have the legs anymore to start week in and week out in the Premier League. And who, even if he did, I think Matic himself is far more suited to starting in a double pivot than playing in a 4-3-3. So for me, if I don't I could see that happening under Solskjaer, but I think that they would definitely need to bring in a pure defensive midfielder, somebody potentially like Teun Koopmeiners, um, Boubacar Kamara. Uh, I think that Declan Rice will probably be too much money for
Yeah.
a United team that are going to want to that that have already spent a lot of money on Sancho and soon Varane. So I wouldn't see that happening. But if United were to move to a 4-3-3, I think that there would have to be a signing in the sixth position in the defensive
Yeah.
midfield position.
It's just a bit
Yeah,
depressing almost,
yeah,
thinking about how United could go into another season with Scott McTominay and Fred. Like, there's no disrespect to them. They do the
yeah.
job, but they're not the sort of players that will take United to the next level. And, you know, maybe with Varane and Maguire, we could get away with it. But even then, the Premier League is full of quality, and it's not FIFA, like you do need a solid defensive midfielder. I think the last few Premier League teams to have won the league and to be at the very top, they've always had like a very commanding, solid central defensive midfielder who can just sit in just above the defenders, and I feel like United have lacked that for a while. But hopefully we do get in someone soon. I think Matic, like you said, his days are gone, and I think he's the only sort of player that can really do that sort of role. I think Fred is just not capable of that. Same as Scott McTominay. I think he's more attacking minded. He's not too disciplined. I feel like he likes to push up, and I don't think that's his strongest position as well. Percy sitting back.
I think Matic is also a great example of United giving a contract to a player when they should have either cashed in on him or let him walk for free.
Yeah,
No disrespect to him, he was clearly very important in them securing top four back during Project Restart. But
yeah,
I just think that he for me that's happened far too often with United just deciding to we don't want to lose this player for free, let's give him another contract that will tie him down and automatically reduce the pool of interested teams because of his
yeah.
high wages. So yeah, I think that I just don't think it would make any sense whatsoever to move to a 4-3-3 if there's no signing in defensive midfield. I think that a move to a 4-3-3 would definitely help someone like Donny van de Beek get into the United team. But I don't know. I think that the 4-2-3-1 will remain just because of Solskjaer's options at midfield. And I also think that if you want to get the most out of Bruno Fernandes, I think that a 4-2-3-1 makes a bit more sense. Bruno could definitely play in a 4-3-3, but I just think he'd make he would probably his abilities would probably be more suited to a 4-2-3-1.
He's
Yeah,
almost like a second striker at times,
yeah,
Bruno. Like, he really likes to get forward, and I don't think on the ball he's not really one of those players that likes to carry it or try
right.
and do something. He's more of a give and go or get the ball, shoot. He's more of a direct player, I think. So I completely
Yeah,
agree with you on that.
but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, after signing Varane, I mean, I'd argue that defensive midfielder is a bigger priority than signing a center back. But
Yeah,
after signing Varane, for me, the United need to take the next step forward and go for a defensive midfielder. Part of me, when seeing these links to Trippier, it's like, okay, he's a good player, but you're going for a right back when
yeah.
you should be, But whatever. I'm sure we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, well, do you personally think that United will get any business done after Varane? Do you think that United is still looking on for more players, or do you think that will be cut like that? Because normally with United from the past few years, it's almost transfer windows are always like too good to be true, and like Obviously, Varane's not done yet, but it's looking like there might be a little bit of a change this season because we've already got Jadon Sancho in, who was, the priority anyway. And then getting Varane, no one really expected that. It's everyone's dream, but no one expected that. Having Varane, Sancho, and then do you think United will even look for someone else, look at more positions, or do you think that, do you think United's just going to finish it there?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because United, they're almost like half Manchester City and half Liverpool at times, in
Yeah,
that like they will spend a ton of money, but at the same time, like you will see the Glazers kind of act like their compatriots FSG, and like say, oh, we need to sell players before we can spend, which is completely understandable.
yeah,
Given United's wage bill, given the effects of the pandemic, and I think that they will need to sell a few more players before they can. After completing the Varane deal, I would expect them to focus a bit more on outgoings before getting some new players in. So I mean, I would say that selling Lingard should be a no-brainer, given the fact that he's entering the final 12 months of his deal. Potentially, I mean, we've talked about Henderson and De Gea. Maybe one of those two leave. I don't know. I think that Diogo Dalot could potentially leave. Um, there is definitely interest from Milan, but I would say it's far from certain. And of
yeah,
course, if Dalot leaves, then you need to bring in another right back. Um, but yeah, I think that if I was United, I would definitely be looking to offload some players just to balance the books. If you can get a good offer for like Daniel James after his Euros, like I would definitely be taking that and try to get a profit on him,
yeah,
especially when there are players like Ahmad and Shora Tiri who are ready to step up. Um, so yeah, I think that selling players will definitely be a priority for them. But I don't know. I mean, after signing Sancho and Varane, like from my point of view, that says that they're serious about challenging for the Premier League. And
yeah,
frankly, I just think it would be kind of a half-hearted effort to go and sign those two great players and then not sign another midfielder when
yeah.
it
Like, why
sounds,
leave it here?
yeah, like why
Just
leave it here?
go all
Why
the
not
way.
just go all in? They
Yeah,
clearly believe in Solskjaer. They clearly believe in this team. Why not go in all in and try to sign another player, to partner Pogba in the middle of the pitch? Yeah, I think that I don't think, like, I don't know. United could sign Messi on a free transfer tomorrow, and I still wouldn't back them to win the Premier League until they
yeah,
complete a deal for a defensive midfielder, because it's such a glaring need for them. And like I just don't know why you would stop it there. So yeah,
yeah,
that's what I would say. There are plenty of options that are cheaper than Declan Rice that are within United's financial reach, and that even with only selling like Lingard, they could still probably afford.
yeah. Now, going into more of like the women's team sort of side, there's also been a transfer, obviously, the world record transfer fee, 200,000, I'm pretty sure, for Lauren James from Manchester United to Chelsea. United are selling one of their best prospects there. Um, what's the story behind that? Like, there's been some weird things going around the Manchester United women's team the last few months. The manager leaving and some upsets of this treatment and how the backing isn't there with the money side of things. Uh, do you know anything about that? Do you think that United are maybe like leaving their women's side to the women's team to the side, or is it more just they're planning for the future? What's going on around there?
Yeah, I mean, I must say that I don't follow the women's league as much as I do the Premier League,
Yeah,
but I have been keeping an eye on the a bit of an eye on what's happening with Manchester United. I was pretty confused to see Casey Stoney leave at the end of the season after doing quite well with the women's team. It seemed like they were going to challenge and win the league title just a few years after being founded. And then she left. I think she's in San Diego now. So back in the States. So yeah, that seems like a massive loss for them. And yeah, I did remember reading an article that the United's women's their resources were just their facilities were kind of underfunded and not really kept up on, which is a shame. And frankly, you're seeing that with a lot of English clubs such as Liverpool's women's team. I think that as far as the development of the women's game, you do see quite a few teams like Lyon splashing, spending a lot of money on resources, on facilities, and on players. But overall, I definitely think that Lyon are probably the exception rather than the rule at this point. I think that still far too many teams are kind of ignoring it and kind of turning a blind eye to it. So yeah, Lauren James leaving United, that's pretty big as well for them. But it should be interesting to see her linking up with her brother. I don't know, maybe we can get like a training video of those two. That would be pretty cool.
That was probably one of the key factors to it. You obviously want to be close to your family, and yeah, it makes sense. But at the same time, it's just a weird transfer because she's one of United's youngest talents, and it's a hefty fee selling it to a rival. It's like, is there something behind it? Is United gonna take this money and look elsewhere? Like personally, I'm the same as you. I don't know too much about the women's scene, but it was a bit of a shock, and it's from my club side, so yeah, it's one of them ones.
They've still got some other good players. I think Tobin Heath, and Leah Galton. So yeah, but as a top European side, you need to take your women's side seriously and invest in that.
It looks like the future, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah,
like
it really
it's building a lot of rise.
I would say it's the present as well right now.
Yeah, 100%.
It was the future, but I don't think that losing Lauren James is as damaging as the reports that United's women's facilities were super, ignored and underfunded. Yeah. That should be the bigger embarrassment for me.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. But yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up. We've been having a nice talk. We've got a lot of questions answered, and it's been a pleasure to have you on, Zach. If you want to plug your pages or social medias now, then feel free to, and be sure to check them out, guys.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me on. I'm the co-creator of Breaking Lines, so you can check us out at BTLVid on Twitter. We've got plenty of analysis on Manchester United players, and I'm sure that we will have something coming up on Raphael Varane, as well as other potential United signings when they do arrive.
Okay, great stuff. Well, once again, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us. I hope that United do make some business. I hope you're all right with the Varane stuff. I hope that signing is done very quickly and soon. But yeah, it's been a very good pleasure. Thank you. Go check out his pages, like he said. And yeah, see you later, guys.
Thank you so much.
Okay.